Hi, my name is Tim. I want to share something with you guys that needs to be shared. Something that's been on my heart for a long time. This year has been incredible. But when I say incredible, I'm talking about in my personal life. I've seen God do things. I see opportunity for God, but it goes further than that. This isn't just about me. It's about what's going on in all of us on a much deeper level. A few years ago, my dad passed away of cancer. He had lung cancer, back cancer, he had cancer under his arms. His body was just full of cancer. It was difficult in a way. Me and my dad never had the best father-son relationship. And that affected me on a very large scale. I carried a lot of burdens. I felt like I could never be good enough. I was never good enough for my dad. I felt like he always expected me to be perfect, and I could never be perfect. And all my life, I just desired to get away from that, to get away from my dad, to get away from my family. And I was hurt in many ways. In a lot of ways, I hurt myself because I didn't understand the truth. I didn't understand what was keeping me from seeing the truth. And at the same time, I saw God this way. This is how I saw God. I thought if I couldn't be good enough for my father, for my dad, how could I be good enough for God? I know there's a lot of people out there that struggle with that. There's a lot of people. The good part is that God's not like our earthly fathers. He's much greater. He's much more loving. If we try to compare him to how we see our earthly fathers, we will let the devil destroy us, because that's the way the devil wants us to see our earthly fathers. My dad was in that hospital bed for a week or so in South Dakota, and me and my family were able to go up there and see him. And you may think, this is a sad moment for you. It's not sad that my dad passed away, because I saw something in him that I don't see in a lot of people. And I saw that God was living in him, even though he couldn't properly portray that to me as a dad, even though he couldn't properly communicate that to me as a dad. I saw God living in him. And even though I knew I couldn't be good enough for him, I knew there was something I was missing. We're all human, and we do fail. But the problem is we let failure define us. It does not define us. You cannot allow that. That is not what Jesus came and died for. And my dad was in that hospital bed. And no matter how much pain I saw him go through, the thing that just really got me was that he could still smile. He was still in his right mind. He shared Jesus with the nurses, with the doctors. They had never seen that before. They had never seen someone on their deathbed in that condition. And the amount of pain I saw my dad go through, it kind of hits you hard. I guess later on, I don't personally want to see anyone go through that. But being in that kind of pain and still being able to portray the love of Jesus, it really shows that God is doing something despite what we think, despite what we feel. We visited my dad in the hospital.
And he said a number of things, but I don't remember anything he said. Except one thing. I remember one thing. He said Jesus is the only thing worth living for. He told me to remember that. He was right. And it took me about 6 years before I understood that fully. Because at the beginning of 2020, God radically changed my life in a way that I never could have imagined. You know, I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up thinking that I had to try. You know, I had to try to go to church. I had to try to read my Bible. I had to try to love God. I had to try to be a Christian. That destroyed me. And I know that destroys many people. It destroys their faith in God. It destroys reality. It destroys truth. The devil will come in and tell you that you have to try because he knows when you fail that you will hold it against yourself, that you will see God as non-existent and you will turn from him. You cannot allow yourself to go down this road, and if you do, you have to know that Jesus has always been there. He has his arms out towards you. All he wants you to do is let go of it and run to him. That is love. That is mercy. His grace is amazing. You need to know this. The devil plays a very sick, twisted game. You cannot play his game. No matter how many times you failed, I have failed. I can't even keep track. It's probably been millions of times. You know, I was in pornography for years of my life. No matter how many times I tried to stop, no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't. I would go for 2 weeks, I would go for 3 weeks, and I thought I was good. And somehow I would be pulled back in. I would be shamed by something and I would say, what is the use in trying? There is no use in trying. God didn't show up. When I said, God help me, he didn't show up. But that was my fault. That wasn't God's fault because he couldn't. I wouldn't let him. I wouldn't let him show up. When you turn your back on God, when you pretend to love him, when you try to love him, there are still things that I've seen in my life where God has shown up and I've seen incredible things. I've seen him do things that I cannot deny. And I want to share more of those testimonies later. But somehow I just kept turning away from him. And it was difficult because I knew who I was. I knew I was a hypocrite. I went to church. I tried to be a Christian. And behind everyone's back, I failed. Again and again and again. And I laugh because now none of that means anything. Because Jesus saved me. I carried so much burden over the years. Last year I turned 31. And for 31 years of my life, I didn't know God like I thought I did. I didn't really understand his love. And I was guilted. I was guilted by people in the church. I was guilted by friends. I was guilted by myself. The hardest person to forgive was myself. It wasn't until I had a conversation with my mom on the phone about 6 years after my dad passed away. I told my mom, I said, I carry all this weight. I feel like I was a failure to my dad. I could never be good enough. And because I couldn't be good enough for him, I couldn't be good enough for God. I feel like I wasted my dad's life in certain areas with distractions, with things that I thought was important. And because of that, I carried a heavy weight. And that affected my family. It affected my wife. It affected my kids. It affected my job. It affected the people around me because of who I became. And I couldn't shine. I couldn't be an example of who God was. I was a horrible example of who God was. And when I talked to my mom on the phone, she said, "You're looking at it all wrong." She said, "There's so much you missed. Your dad wanted you to know how much he loved you, but he didn't know how to express it because of the way he was raised." And that broke me. That broke me. That's when I started to understand. That's when God started to show me his love. And I had to sit down with my wife. And I had to confess a number of things to her that was very difficult for me. And she wouldn't talk to me for 3 days. And it was a very difficult time. But I said, "God, if I lose my family, if I lose my job, if I lose everything, if I've still gained knowing you in a way that I've never known you before, it'll be worth it." What I've come to understand is that God's love is unconditional. While we are still alive, there is still a chance, there is still an opportunity. He has given us an opportunity to come back to him. He will always be there with his arms open. And I've continually been reminded because Jesus showed up in a dream years ago. He met me in a dream. And he showed me his love. And over the years, even though I wasn't walking with him, that continued to remind me that there was still hope. There could still be hope. I just didn't know how to find it. But in that moment, Jesus broke me. In this last year, he has done more things in my life than I have ever imagined he could do. And I prayed, "God, I can't do it anymore. If there's any hope for me," I prayed, "God, you give me a desire for you because I am sick of trying. I am tired of trying. I'm tired of trying to find time to read my Bible. I'm tired of that feeling like a burden. I'm tired of going to church feeling like I'm trying to accomplish something, but I'm not." I said, "God, if there is hope for me, you have to give me a desire for you." In what way is he going to turn that down? He doesn't. He doesn't. Because he is so good. He is so good. And the second thing I asked him for, I said, "God, show me how to love people the way you love me. I want to love others the way you love me." And he started working those two things in me. And he's continuing to work those things in me. And it has blown my mind. And all that burden that I carried over those years, and it was hard, it stacked up. That can become a heavy burden to carry. You feel so hopeless. I thought, I am going to hell. What is the point of living? What is the point of trying to live like a Christian? I am going to hell. That's what I thought. But at the same time, I said, you know what? I am still alive. There is still hope. I'm going to fight, and whether I get there or not, God is going to have to do it. He is going to have to change me, but I'm not just going to let go of everything. When people let go of everything, God can still save them. But please hold on to Him. It is worth it. It is worth it.